This has been, I guess you could say, a long time coming because we've really wanted to hear from Johnny. And I consider him a friend. I'm not sure he considers me a friend. But we've known each other over 35 years. And in a sense, it chokes me up because I one time called, or well, I didn't call him, but my wife had called him, and he had taken my daughter as a page down to the Capitol, and that was back in, I think, 81. But Johnny's been in, I mean, you talk about a man that's willing to serve the community. This man has done it. You know, we all talk about, oh, how neat it'd be to be a state rep like Fran Miller, or a state senator, or a congressman, or a senator, or whatever. But you don't know the price these people pay. I've worked in a ton of campaigns around the country and see these people make it, and then the life they pay. You know, everybody thinks they go to Washington, they don't do anything, and then they come home. They don't come home. They come to their district. They come to their state. And guess what? Everybody wants a piece of them, just like we did. We wanted him here. And everybody else, there's 4 other groups today that would like him there. And the point is, this man serves from the heart. Like I said, I've known him over 35 years. He, in 77, started as a state representative. I think he did it for 13 years or so, but over half of it, he was the leader for the Republican side. And one thing, I had started an organization that, I'm not going to tell you all about it, but it wasn't liked a lot. And I remember one time I had to go down and meet with Tom Murphy, who then was the longest reigning Speaker of the House in the nation. And talking to Mr. Murphy, or Speaker Murphy, he said, after he quizzed me a lot of things because of this organization I was doing, he said, "You going to run for office?" I said, "No, sir, I never planned to." I wanted to say, hey, I ain't dumb, but, you know, I might be stupid. But the point is, the life these guys play. And Tom Murphy said to me, he says, "Well, son, if you're going to run," he says, "you're kind of strange anyhow. You played football for Coach Bryant, you went to Vietnam, and you're always going to church on Sunday." I thought, wow, you know. And he says, "But if you're going to be a politician," he says, "I want you to," he says, "look at Johnny Isakson. That's a man, he may be Republican, but he's willing to step across the aisle and talk to the Democrats as well." And I remembered that. Well, in 1983, I believe it was, a Thursday, September 1st, Larry McDonald was shot down over the China Sea or wherever it was. And I was working for the U.S. Chamber, and over the weekend, I looked at all the people that were entering the race. I mean, wackos from Waco. I mean, you know, it was just, you know, and on Tuesday, 3 o'clock, I'll never forget this, the next Tuesday, I think it was the 5th or 6th, whatever it was, I called Johnny at Northside Realty. And I'd known Johnny, and I said, "Johnny," and he picked up the phone. That's how accessible this man is. And he's still accessible, except he has some secretaries picking up the phone now. But the bottom line was, he picked up the phone, he says, "Hey, Pat, how you doing?" I said, "Johnny, you need to run for Larry McDonald's seat." I don't know if you even remember this. And Johnny said, "Pat, I don't know if you've looked at the real estate industry lately, but we're in deep kimchi." And he says, "I've got to get this company out of it." He says, "I can't." And I said, "Oh, you can. We need you." And he said, "No, we're really in dire straits." Well, he didn't run because he would have won. Buddy Darden was the one that became the congressman. But Johnny turned that company around, Northside Realty, to a major power and a major player in this city. And working with the U.S. Chamber, you look for the business people. Well, this guy, there is no doubt about it. He understands business, and he did everything he could when he was for small business, and he's just such a class act. And I could go on, but I'm going to cut it off. But it's my honor and my pleasure to introduce to you our senior U.S. Senator from the state of Georgia, Johnny Isakson.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much. You shouldn't stand before the speech. It may not be any good. So, thank you very much. It's so great to be with so many good friends. If I start naming names, I'll leave some people out. But Rod Knowles is one of my dear friends for years and years and years. He and Dixie are great friends of mine. I appreciate seeing him. Scott Johnson, Fran Millar, who does a fantastic job in the Georgia legislature, does good work all the time. John Sowers, who does good work some of the time. And all my other friends that are here, it's good to be with you, and I'm very honored to be here today. One of the nicest invitations, and most honorable invitations I've ever received was later last year to speak at the 50th anniversary of the Vietnam War with Chuck Hagel and Ray Ordiarno and some of the others in the Capitol. That was an honorary time for me. I enjoyed doing it very much because I know how much of a sacrifice all of you made for our country and for the greatness of our country. And we are in your debt. And I'm here to pay tribute to all of you as veterans and thank you for your service to the United States of America. How many 82nd Airborne folks have we got? Well, guess where I was yesterday? I was at Fort Bragg with Abe Abrams, now the commanding general of FORSCOM. We were at the home of the 82nd Airborne talking about what we're going to do to try and make sure we can fund our military in the years to come, and it was a great day for me to visit. But I went through the entire museum there about the 82nd Airborne and the job that they did, not only in World War I and World War II, but in Vietnam and Grenada and so many other places. So thank you for your service, whatever branch that you were in. Thank you for your service to America, and thank you for giving me the chance to be here today. What I'm going to try and do is cover some topics that I think you would be interested in. But if I miss them, I'm going to open the floor for questions at the end. You feel free to ask me anything you'd like to ask me. First of all, my telephone number is 770-661-0999. And Sheila Robinson handles all my veterans claims. So you be sure and call her and ask for Sheila. Don't ask for me. No, I'm serious. Ask for Sheila or ask for me. We have a full-time office in my office that does nothing but handle veterans claims. As chairman of the Veterans Committee in the United States Senate, I feel like it's my responsibility to see to it that the veterans of Georgia know that I'm the go-to guy for them in the Congress of the United States and on behalf of their benefits from the Veterans Administration. And I'm very proud of what we're doing with the VA. Everybody in here who's dealt with the VA health system probably has a complaint, and I understand that. VA health system is a difficult manage. In fact, I don't know if y'all know this or not, but the second largest element of the United States government after the United States Army is medical benefits for the Veterans Administration. 314,000 people, 365 days a year, delivering services to our veterans. That is a huge organization. But it's there for one purpose, and that is to deliver on the promise that was made to you when you volunteered or when you were drafted. And a lot of the Vietnam-era folks were drafted, and I understand that. But that commitment by your country should be absolutely complete, and I'm there to see to it that it is. And we're doing better and better and better every day. I'm proud to tell you that Leslie Wiggins, who's been the director of the Claremont Hospital, has now been made the VISN director for VISN 7. She's now over Charleston, Georgia, and parts of Alabama, and is a great leader for veteran health care benefits from the Veterans Administration in this part of the state. I'm glad to tell you that Bob McDonnell is a great leader of the Veterans Administration. President Obama made a great selection in Bob McDonnell when he appointed him secretary. Bob McDonnell is a veteran. He cares passionately. He's donating his time. He gives his salary back to the country. He donates his time to serve as Secretary of the Veterans Administration, does a great job. And Sloan Gibson, who some of you in here might have known in the Bank South days when he was a leader at Bank South, is now the Deputy Secretary to Bob McDonnell. He does a great job. I was with Sloan yesterday when we cut the ribbon at the new hospital in Fayetteville, North Carolina. All in all, to say the Veterans Administration is there to serve you. If you have a problem, if you have a difficulty, if you have a claim, if you have a slow response on a claim, if you have a slow response on an appeal, call us. I can't promise you I can speed it up as fast as you would like, but I can promise it'll get all the attention that you need. Now let's talk about our military status in the United States right now. We are in a difficult position. I was with Abe Abrams and I were together yesterday at Fort Bragg talking about the problems we have. We're taking the Army from 490,000 to 450,000, which will be the lowest level it's been at in a long, long time. In fact, we are not a type of military that can confront enemies on two fronts. We're below the readiness level we need to be, and that's unfortunate. But President Obama has decided to bring our military down. Were it not for the dedicated career people in our military and the weapon systems that we possess and the advantage we have in weapons, I don't know what we would do. But I'm proud to tell you one thing. We passed a budget and an appropriations bill 2 weeks ago in December, which a lot of people didn't like. But the good news is we took a bite out of sequestration and we began funding our military at the level it needs to be funded at, and I'm committed to see to it we continue to do it. You know the MasterCard commercials where they say things are priceless? The most priceless thing in our country are the men and women who serve us in the military. Without our military, we could not do or be what we are. We have got to see to it they have the funding and the commitment to do whatever it is we ask them to do. They never complain. They never complain about what they're asked to do, but we've got to make sure they never have a complaint about not getting the services they need and the backing they need to serve this country. And I'm going to see to it that we do so. And we're in times different than any times in the past. The war against ISIL is a huge, huge problem for the United States of America. We have a strategy. Quite frankly, my political position and my practical position and my position as a veteran myself is it's a lousy strategy. Our strategy is to wait ISIL out. It's an 8 to 15-year cycle, which is going to be dangerous for our country and dangerous for a lot of people who will lose their life trying to fight. As I said on Squawk Box in December when I was in New York and was interviewed, they said, well, if you could be president, if you had one thing that you could do, what would you do about ISIL to change the paradigm of the United States strategy? I said, I would do one thing. If somebody will cut your head off, if they'll kill themselves to kill you, if they'll burn you in a cage on the square in the town, you have but one alternative, and that's to kill them first. Every single one of them. They are fanatics of a hijacked religion, a sect of a hijacked religion. They believe in a religious caliphate as a government. How many of you know the difference in ISIS and ISIL? We talked about ISIS, which is the Islamic State in Syria. ISIL is the Islamic State in the Levant. The Levant is all of the Eastern Mediterranean. They're getting ready to go into the Maghreb, which is all of North Africa. They're expanding the caliphate everywhere they go, and everywhere they do, it is a threat to the security and the peace of the United States of America. A lot of people forget that the first president to ever mention the name radical Islam was Thomas Jefferson, the Barbary pilots. Those were the first confrontation we ever made, and we've been fighting them ever since. They've gotten stronger and stronger, and their beliefs have gotten more dangerous to our country and dangerous to civilian peace in the world. And we've got to do one thing: we've got to beat them. And we've got to kill every one of them that's a member of ISIL as fast as we can. The faster we do it, the better off we'll be. You can negotiate with them. The only thing they understand is what they want to dish out, and that's fear and terror, and we've got to stop it as fast as we can. And I remain committed as the chairman of the Veterans Affairs Committee in the Senate to see to it the veterans who go and fight ISIL for us, when they come home, they have all the benefits they need to have. On the funding bill we passed, there were a lot of complaints about Congress finally passing an appropriations bill. A lot of people said, all you guys do is spend money. A couple things to take home. First of all, the appropriation bill we passed last month was the lowest appropriation since 2008. We were $151 billion lower than the 2008 appropriations. Everybody said, that can't be true. The reason we were lower is because for the first time in 7 years, we did appropriations. We've been doing continuing resolutions. You know what a continuing resolution is? That means you keep on doing the same old thing you've been doing the same old way and fund the same amount of money, whether it works or not. It's about time we spend our money like you have to spend your money. We ought to prioritize. We ought to give results. We ought to do oversight. And we ought to see to it that every taxpayer dollar that comes in goes to the benefit of the country and is not wasted or squandered by politicians who don't have the guts and the intestinal fortitude to do what they should do with your money and the revenues of this country. And I, for one, am committed to seeing to it, as long as I'm in Washington, that your dollars are spent as frugally as I spend my dollars. That's my commitment, and I promise you it'll always be my commitment. On taxes, a lot of people got mad at the budget deal we passed. We passed a budget deal that was $151 billion less than 2008. We also cut taxes by $675 billion. Let me repeat that. We cut taxes by $675 billion. For those of you in small business, and I know this is the Vietnam Veterans Business Association, we extended bonus depreciation. We took a lot of business tax treatments that were expiring, and we extended them for 2, for 5, and in some cases indefinitely. Research and development tax credits, indefinite extension, which means they go on and on and on. Motion picture industry, which is big to Georgia. We're now number 2 in the world in motion pictures. We extended those tax credits to attract that business to our state. We repealed the medical device tax for 2 years, so you no longer have to pay a tax of 2.4% on the stent in your heart, or the implant in your mouth, or any other tool that's used in your health care. We began to do some things that made sense. You know, President Obama had a lot of good ideas and he had a lot of bad ideas, and the worst idea he ever had was the health care change that he did. Obamacare is a disaster, and we're trying to pull back the taxes that were raised to fund Obamacare so we can get back to a health care system that's affordable and competitive and that you can depend on as a citizen of this country and as a former veteran, whether you're in VA health care, whether you're in TRICARE, or whether you're in the private services. But all in all, we have the greatest country on the face of this earth. You don't find anybody trying to break out of the United States of America. They're all trying to break in because as bad as our warts are, there ain't no place better to be. And we've got to rise up and do what we've always done as Americans, and that's stand behind our country and fight and do everything we can to keep the liberty and peace that we were all granted ourselves for the generations to come. I tell people, Pat and Gar were talking walking in, he's 72, I'm 71. The rest of my life is about seeing to it I leave my children with a country that is safe, as prosperous and as free as the one my parents left to me. We're at a point in time where that may not be possible unless we get ourselves a nap around our neck and decide to commit ourselves to frugal spending, commit ourselves to go after ISIL and defeat them, and commit ourselves to empower free enterprise and lessen the impact of a pervasive federal government which soaks up too much of your money and offers you too little benefit. So with that said, I'm going to open the floor for questions unless you want to hear a long, boring speech. If you want to hear a long, boring speech, they train us in the Senate how to talk for 45 minutes and say nothing, and I'm fully capable of doing that. It's an art form, but I can do it. So who's got a question? I can't see, so you're going to... Yes, sir. Are you the one from Detroit? No, sir. Where's the one from Detroit? All Yankees are welcome as long as they fought for the country. We're glad to have you. Yes, sir. What's your question?
Long story was I had a VA claim and I had to went on for several years, and I finally wound up writing you a letter and David Perdue a letter, and I got immediate response. Why does something have to go through you guys before we get expedited responses?
You know, it shouldn't, but as long as it takes that, you call me anytime. My home number's in the book and my office number's in the book. It should not be that way. In fact, I have told Bob McDonnell, the Secretary of the VA, and a great cabinet member, that one of my goals as chairman of the committee is to see to it that the VA is responsive to the claims without a congressman or a senator having to call. But if that's necessary, that's why we're there, and so you be sure and call us. We're working every day to make the response better. You know what a bureaucrat is? Let me tell you what a bureaucrat is.
That because it got a congressional input, you guys, it moved it to the top. And I'm talking about less than 15 days. I got an immediate response to something that was going on for 3 years.
I wish you hadn't have said that. There's some people in here saying, damn, I'm going to write him a letter. I need to get... The answer to the question is it should not be that way. I'm glad you got the response. They tell us they don't move them up because we call. In fact, they tell us sometimes they move them down because we call. But if you got a fast response, that's what you pay your taxes for, and that's why you ought to go to the polls and vote. And if you get a chance, vote for me. Now, anyway, who else got a question? Yes, sir. Back at the... Yes, ma'am, or I can't tell if it's a ma'am or a sir. Back here at the back table?
We got one right here anyway.
Okay.
Yes, I watching television and I hear all this news about ISIS and not putting troops on the ground to defeat ISIS. How do you feel about putting troops on the ground and to beat ISIS?
Well, I'm on public record. I support putting troops on the ground, but it's a different type of a situation than we had when we went. Thank you. We have demonstrated that our special forces, our special operations, our cybersecurity and our capabilities are such that we don't have to put an army of 130,000 men on the ground and women like we did in Iraq or like we had in Afghanistan at one point in time. But we have won enough respect in that part of the world, and we have the capability. If we commit the men and women necessary to carry out the mission, then we can do it with some boots on the ground. It may take 10,000 additional boots. It may take 20,000. I don't think it'll take 130,000. But, you know, all the air, look, All the air war in the world is fine, but if you don't have human beings on the ground giving you real intelligence in real time, those bombs are not going to be that effective. You've got to have forward operations giving you the intel to do. You've got to penetrate and break the enemy up, which we've done on a couple of occasions already. We demonstrated with Osama bin Laden. You give the United States military the option, you give our special forces the job, they'll figure out a way to go get him. They got Osama bin Laden and didn't come out with a single scratch on any of our guys and killed him. That's what we're going to have to start doing to go to the head of the snake in ISIL, and we'll find out how religious they really are when we start doing that. And I think with boots on the ground, we can win that thing a lot faster than we can without. Air power is great, and with all my due respect to the Air Force, and I was an Air Guardsman myself, I appreciate what they can do, but there's so much a limit you can do to the air war. Eventually, you got to have boots on the ground. Now, yes.
Over here.
I'll tell you what I'm going to do. I'm not going to recognize anymore. You just find them and give them a microphone. I'll answer
I've got the
question.
microphone. I'll be right with you.
Okay.
Can you help me understand why at the top level of our government we can't figure out a way to secure our southern border? Doesn't seem hard to me. Help me understand.
Well, it's not hard to explain either. You don't have the resolve to do it, and we didn't. And quite frankly, it's not a partisan answer. We didn't have the resolve under George W. Bush. In fact, people forget. In 1983, Ronald Reagan gave 3 million people amnesty in this country and said, from now on out, we're going to enforce the border and see to it we don't have illegal aliens coming into the country. We never did it. Now we have 12 million in the country, or somewhere. We don't know how many exactly, but we think 12 million. It's going to take a resolve, and it's not just building a wall. I'll tell you what the real security is. It's called biometrically secure identification. If you have a retina scan or a fingerprint on every visa that's issued to anybody coming into this country, whether it's for a guest worker, an H-1B, or a 3-day bereavement visa, you have a seamless way to enforce immigration laws, because once you have a biometric ID, it's identifiable, then you don't have any more forged documents. You can't forge a retina scan. You can't forge a fingerprint. How many of you have been to Hartsfield lately at the International Terminal and come back from overseas? When you go through U.S. Customs, there's a U.S. Customs door and there's a foreign customs door. When you go through foreign customs and you look at the customs agent, there's a little birdhouse on his desk, and every foreigner that comes in sticks their finger in there. You know why? Because their fingerprint is on their passport, and he looks at the passport and looks at that finger and realizes whether or not that finger belongs to the person that gave him that passport. We have 3 cells in Hartsfield International Airport that are full every night with people we intercept trying to come in this country. A biometrically secure ID is a seamless way to enforce your border and a lot less expensive than building a wall that's 20 feet high. People can get a 21-foot ladder, but they can't forge biometrics, and that's what we need to do.
Senator, my real question is what happened after 9/11 when the Saudi family was allowed to go back to Saudi Arabia, and it's still classified information. And I'm in favor of the wall because Israel has one.
I don't know the answer to the Saudi family. The only thing I remember about 9/11 is they offered $10 million to New York City, and Rudy Giuliani turned it down, which I really respected and admired that he did that. I'm not familiar with the royal family going back to Saudi Arabia after 9/11, though. I'm sorry I can't answer that.
Senator, I'm a legal immigrant, but I did serve 34 years.
Well, God bless you.
Thank you. And I did serve 34 years in the U.S. Army, though.
God bless you again.
We're having some issues of trying to find out the accountability at VA of the various higher level management that have not been prosecuted by the Justice Department. Can you shed any light on that?
You know, the Philadelphia case was a prime example of why there's some corruption in the VA. We had some people doing things to ingratiate themselves and raise their own pay to the detriment of veterans and skip around the protocol they should have. But I'm very proud. I don't like to brag about firing people, and I don't like to brag about costing people their jobs, but I want to tell you something. I told Bob McDonnell as secretary, until some people in the VA understand there's a consequence to bad behavior, you're going to continue to have bad behavior. How many who know who Allison Hickey is? Allison, quit. And the reason she quit, we found Allison's mismanagement of the VA so bad that I confronted Allison and told her I was going to get the Inspector General going into her records and see to it that we got her out of work or she can quit. She quit the next day. You've got to do that. When I ran my company, I expected things of people. If they did the job, I praised them. If they didn't do the job, I tried to correct them. If they continued to not do the job, I fired them. And I expect the same thing to be done by the constituents of Georgia in terms of me as their senator. So if you set a standard, people will rise to it, but with no standard, they'll sink. And that's what's been happening in the VA. But we've turned that around. We sent one in prison in Arizona. We got 2 in Philadelphia out of the VA. We got Allison Hickey out of the VA administration. We're one by one getting them out and setting the example. And once you take a few out, everybody else gets the message because they don't want to be the next one to go. So I think you just enforce the rules and let the chips fall where they may.
Got a question back here.
Senator, I've been in 6 different military hospitals since being wounded in Vietnam, 6 different private hospitals, and 4 different veterans hospitals. By far, Atlanta is the worst. When you say it's getting better, I don't see it. My fellow veterans at that hospital don't see it. I spent 6 weeks there last year for 2 major surgeries. I'm going back in shortly for another one. It's getting worse. It's not getting better. I'm telling you from the veterans' perspective, the individuals, it's not a better system. The choice system does not work. The tap line is a joke. I don't see how you say it gets better. I read your editorial in the Journal Constipation a few weeks ago. And I heard your comments today. So I'm sorry. It isn't getting better for the veteran.
Well, it's not hard. Wait, hold on one second. It's not hard to get better when you're starting it awful. And we started awful about 18 months ago when I came in. Now, as I said a minute, I think Leslie Wiggins has done a great job when we brought her in to try and clean up some of the mess. We had 3 suicides and 6 once at the VA hospital. One of them in the hospital itself, where they took their own life in one of the hospitals. I mean, the Atlanta VA hospital was a mess. I take your word at what you're saying. There's still problems. I know there's still problems, but it is an improvement over where it was, and we're going to continue to improve until it gets to be as good as we could possibly deliver. If you have anything you'd like for us to look at that we haven't, or to find out what we have looked at, you call my number, 770-661-0999, and ask for Sheila Robinson. She'll take the notes. In fact, I'm going to be at the VA hospital on Thursday or Friday of this week, going through a review with his Visiting 7 director. I'll be sure and pass on any information you give me in terms of areas where we need to improve. I didn't say in that editorial that I wrote for the AJC that we had improved and we had arrived. I said we were improving, but it was a work in progress. We had a long way to go. But I take criticism. I welcome criticism. If you don't find out what's not working, you can't fix it. So be sure and call us. That's why I gave you the number. I'm sorry I'm squinting, but I just cannot see with these lights. Yes, sir.
Senator, the U.S. Army issues a combat infantryman's badge to people who serve in the infantry in combat. During the latest wars against terrorism, they created a combat action badge for people who serve in combat but are not infantry. It was limited to who served after 1990. They've now changed the limit for no time of year, but they specifically stated it was not available to Vietnam veterans. The reason stated was that combat infantry badges were given to non-infantry, therefore it covers the problem. My question is, it seemed like it was just an excuse not to deal with us.
Well, the first I've heard of it, and Jordan, are you taking notes? Where's Jordan? Did you get that? You see this gentleman over here standing up? Would you be sure and catch him before you leave? I'll get you an answer. I do not know why. But nobody's more important or less important than any veteran that served in any conflict in the United States of America, whether it was a declared war or not. Anybody that served in Vietnam deserves our praise, and any recognition anybody else gets, and I'll see to it they get it if I have a chance to find out. So if you'll tell Jordan Dawson that, he's coming over your way now, I think.
I'd like to ask you, as far as Israel is concerned, why are we still sending money, or is the president allowed to send money to Iran to finish the missile? And Russia and Iran together, and we're still supporting that, while Israel is trying to tell us that can't be allowed.
Well, first of all, I voted against the Iranian nuclear deal. It was a lousy deal. The president made a lousy deal, and it's getting worse by the day, and he's looking the other way. They've already violated the agreement twice by testing long-range delivery systems for a nuclear warhead, and it's a disaster, and it's one of the reasons why he's going to be recognized as one of the worst presidents to ever serve this country. Nonetheless, if I heard your question correctly, we give $3.1 billion a year to Israel in terms of foreign assistance. $2.2 billion comes back to us because they buy U.S. intelligence, U.S. military systems, U.S. weapon systems, and U.S. aircraft. The remainder of it goes to support the Israeli intelligence network. Let me tell you something. The Middle East is a very dangerous neighborhood. If we didn't have Israel and Jordan, we wouldn't have any friends at all. Turkey's a fair weather friend with Incirlik. We had to rent the Kyrgyzstan airport to be able to go into Afghanistan in the first place. We're very weak in terms of assets in that part of the world. I believe in supporting Israel. Israel is a good partner of ours, and I'm going to continue to vote to support Israel to see to it that that last bastion of hope and democracy in the Middle East has the support of the United States as long as they exist. And I'm going to do everything I can to do that. In terms of the Iranians, you can clap for that. That's all right. One of my proudest moments took place on December the 15th of last year when I secured the funding. I secured $1 billion from the Paribas Bank forfeiture for the sanctions against Iran to pay the 43 hostages held by the Iranians in Baghdad in 1979 and 1981, to see to it they were compensated for their incarceration, their brainwashing, and their trauma. The Iranians are bad people. When the Shah left, the Shah was no shining star, believe me, but he was a friend in a very dangerous world. But the Ayatollahs, Khomeini and that crowd is a bad group. They're bad for the peace in the Middle East. They're bad for the United States of America, and that we need to fight them and confront them everywhere. We don't need to trust them on anything. They have never proven to be an honest broker, and I don't think they ever will as long as they're a religious caliphate. I can't explain why the president did it. I voted against it, and I'm going to continue to try and hold the president's feet to the fire to see to it we don't give them any more money than we have to. Sir? I don't know what money to Iran you're talking about. I'm sorry? Oh, you're talking about the sanctions money. That was not, okay, that was not an appropriation of U.S. taxpayer money. That was a release of sanctions money, which I didn't vote for that either, but that was not your tax money. That was money from foreign people who did business with the Iranians in violation of the U.S. sanctions that had been held in foreign banks until they signed the nuclear deal. The president used it as leverage. It was Iran's money to begin with. He gave it back to him after they agreed to sign a deal, which I voted against that deal because it's a bad deal, as I've said before.
Senator.
Yes.
Don Plunkett. To change the line of questioning, it's my understanding that Montenegro is on a fast track to become the 29th member of NATO. Do you see Ukraine working its way toward becoming a member of NATO?
I hope so.
Thank you. Me too.
I'm glad you asked that question. Ukrainians had weapons of mass destruction. They surrendered their weapons of mass destruction in order to get the Americans to be their partner and their defender. When they were invaded by Putin, as far as I'm concerned, that's a violation of Article 5 of the NATO Charter, and we should have been in there protecting the people in the Ukraine anyway. I think they should be a full-fledged member of NATO, and I would support expansion of NATO as far as we can in that part of the world. Putin is a dangerous fellow. You know, Russia is not the dangerous country it used to be. I tell people, Russia's a gas station with a flag. I mean, they have a lot of natural gas and they have a lot of oil, and that's it. Their university system is crumbling, their military is crumbling, but now with the price of oil going down, they're hurting with that too. But they're a big bully that's trying to flex their muscles, and we've got to see to it we stand up to them, because they'll do what they did in the olden days if we don't stop them.
Senator?
Yes.
My background is healthcare administration. I've run hospitals for 30 plus years and seen the good, the bad, the ugly in the civilian system. The VA hospitals are on the right track. You've got the leadership changes. Turning around a hospital, let alone a system, is no easy task. So it's going to take a couple of years to filter down the leadership at all levels to get the right people in the right slots. But you got to start, and you're doing the right thing. And I really appreciate it. It's got the best computer system in the world. You can go into any VA system and pull up your record no matter where you are. You try that on a civilian hospital, it ain't going to happen. So thank you very much for making those steps. Thank you for pushing that on down, and we really appreciate it.
Well, I appreciate the compliment, but really the people of the VA and the directors of the hospital deserve it. And let me just say one thing, because the gentleman at the back made a question about choice, what we did in August of 2014. We're empowering the private sector to help us meet the demands of our veterans. One thing I am proudest of, last year, the Veterans Administration kept 7 million 547,000 more appointments for health care than it did the previous year. You know why? Because we used the private sector to keep a lot of those appointments, and we used private sector health care merged with VA health care to meet the demands of the veterans. I, for one, am for TRICARE for life for everybody, and eventually want to see to it everybody gets the services they get wherever they are. But until we get to that point, I'm going to continue to try and leverage the private sector participation and the VA appropriation to see to it our veterans get the services they deserve every single day when it comes to their health care. I see a bunch of people standing up. Either I'm doing a bad job or it's time for me to shut up. Last question.
You mentioned some items that's going to help businesses, tax relief. Could you mention anything else that's specific for businesses to improve the economy?
Well, the tax treatments that we did are good. The bad stuff that we did, the stuff we didn't do, which we should have, is get our arms around the National Labor Relations Board. Quite frankly, NLRB is the biggest threat to small business there is in the United States of America. I don't know how many of you know this or not. You can clap for that too. The NLRB has passed a rule called joint employer, which says if you're a employee of a McDonald's franchisee, you're automatically an employer of corporate McDonald's, so every trial lawyer in America can sue big McDonald's rather than just the local franchisee, which is a disaster for the franchise business, which provides many small business people with a template they have to do business. Quickie elections, they've now reduced the time for an election to be called for unionization from 47 days to 11. That's not enough time for management to defend itself. You got this new thing called micro-unions. The National Labor Relations Board approved the 7th floor contemporary shoe department at Bergdorf, what's the name of that? Goodman in New York City. They allowed them to unionize. One department out of 46 departments in one store to unionize. Can you imagine Home Depot? If the hardware department was unionized, the lumber department was unionized, the paint department was unionized, I mean, you'd have a strike a day. So we've got to bring in the National Labor Relations Board, which would be the biggest thing we can to empower small business, and I'm working on that every day.
Thank you, Senator.
Let me say one thing. Thank you very much. Thank you. Please know how much your country is in debt to you for your service to the country and all that you continue to do. It has been an honor for me to be here today, and if I can ever be of any help to you, it's 770-661-0999.
Thanks again.